Accessing peace. Existing without violence, with the ability to calmly resolve conflict. Downloading love. An overwhelming, deep, positive affection towards others. Activating liberty. Living your life as you see fit without infringing on the lives of others.
Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I am your host, Darryl W. Perry, the Liberty Penguin, the Wombat, the uncut cocaine of libertarianism. And it's Friday. You know what that means. Yes, I know it means several things. It means that there's only one more day until that annual, or actually twice annual, changing of the clocks, asterisks for most of the country and a lot of the world. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, although I could. Generally, I would be answering your questions. But, audience, you have failed me. I did not get any questions this week. After having a dearth of questions a couple of weeks ago, and having leftovers last week, alas, I sit here with no questions before me. So, I guess I will rant about the changing of the clocks. It's something that I'm very passionate about. There's actually a lot of things that I'm passionate about, and you know that if you listen to the show. And, well, you're listening right now, so I guess that means that you at least listen somewhat, right? But if you've listened to the show previously, you know that I get very passionate about certain things. And who knew? Who knew that changing the clocks is something that someone could get incredibly passionate about? But it is something that just drives me crazy. The concept of we are changing time. It's just magical. The snap of a finger at 2 a.m. Sunday morning, it automatically becomes 3 a.m. Sunday morning. You spring forward, you fall back. That's how I remember it, and that's probably how you remembered it as well, right? So in the spring, and technically it's not the spring because we're changing the clocks before the official beginning of spring now, but that's another rant for another time. So, spring forward, sometime around the beginning of spring, and actually it's about a week, 8-9 days before the beginning of spring this year, we move the clocks forward 1 hour, and then sometime after the official beginning of fall, I think it's like late October now, possibly November, I don't know, we wind up moving the clocks back. So spring forward, fall back. And this whole thing started because of a joke. Oh, you think I'm kidding right now? You really think I'm kidding? No. Benjamin Franklin is often credited with inventing daylight shifting time, or daylight saving time as it is officially called, or as some people say, and it drives me absolutely bonkers, daylight savings time. There is no S at the end of saving. It's daylight saving time. Hence why I call it daylight shifting time, because you're only shifting an hour. You are not saving any daylight. But I digress. So, again, people credit Benjamin Franklin for coming up with this idea. But if you actually read the idea that he proposed, you will see that it was a work of satire. But because it was written by the great and wonderful Benjamin Franklin many years later, people looked upon that and said, this man is a genius. We shall do this. And basically, daylight shifting time is a way to try to, get other people to live a life that certain people think they should. Oh, people should wake up earlier, and they would do that if it got daylight sooner, or people would wind up, fill in the blank, and we can legislate this because. And there are certain places, the closer to the equator you get, there's not a lot of natural shift in the daylight hours anyway, but a little further north, there's, a pretty wild shift between the amount of daylight that you get in the summer and in the winter. And all that happens with the daylight shifting time is that you wind up making it stay daylight later. And at one time, there may have been a legitimate argument that people use less electricity. But recent studies have shown that because of the type of mobile society that we have here in the United States now, and the fact that, most everything runs on electricity now, there's no real change in the amount of electricity that winds up being saved because of daylight shifting time. If anything, the changing of the clocks actually winds up basically giving everybody jet lag for about a week while people adjust. And there's a lot of negative health effects that come from that. And speaking of health effects, one of those with the shifting of time is heart rates, specifically, increased heart rate because of increased stress. Well, science, or rather some scientists, have done a study and found an interesting link between wisdom and heart rate. The article comes from lifehack.org. For those that believe true wisdom comes from the heart, it may actually not be far from the truth. A new study has been published in the journal Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience that suggests heart rate variation and thinking processes actually work together to create wise reasoning and the understanding of complex social issues. Now, I do recall having previously spoken about, I think it's memory and heart rate and empathy and heart rate, but I don't think I've covered this topic about wisdom and heart rate. We'll get into it here in moments on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $1 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Something else, aside from the shifting of the clocks, that I am passionate about is savings. Particularly the tangible kind that can't be just wiped out through inflation. I'm not talking about saving dollars. I'm talking about saving real, honest things, specifically precious metals, gold, and silver. And, there's a company that's been around for about 40 years that is a trusted source for not only allowing you to buy precious metals, but they will also buy from you should you need to turn some of your hard assets into some liquid assets. And, of course, I'm talking about Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. They have recently, over the last couple of years, started taking Bitcoin, and they've permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. And right now, 1 Bitcoin is more valuable than 1 ounce of gold. So call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on buying and selling precious metals and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 800-874-9760. That's 800-874-9760. Or visit them online at rrbi.co. That's rrbi.co. Let's jump into the study here on the link between wisdom and heart rates. The study carried out by Igor Grossman, a professor of psychology at the University of Waterloo in Canada, and his colleagues at the Australian Catholic University. They wanted to find out whether or not wisdom was purely or has purely to do with cognitive reasoning, or if something else was at play. The team used 150 participants from the Sydney University with the average age of 25 and asked the participants to take part in several tasks, including tasks that involved social reasoning and attributional judgment. The participants were required to give their opinions on subjects they felt strongly about from 2 perspectives: first person, i.e., personal manner, and third person, i.e., critical observer. They were then monitored for their resting heart rate variability throughout the task using an ECG, electrocardiogram, and all experiments were conducted during low physical activity. Heart rates do vary naturally at any given time, even when we're sitting and resting, and especially when we're ranting, as I often do. The variations between heartbeats are directly linked to the nervous system's controlling ability of organ functions. However, for various reasons, some people's heart rates vary much more than others. Yes, you heard that right. Some people, even when resting, will have a heart rate that varies a lot more than others. So I just did a quick search, and the average heart rate is between 60 to 100 beats per minute. So let's say that your resting heart rate is about 80. I'm guessing, because that's somewhere in the middle of that 60 to 100. All right, so your heart rate is 80. But you might fluctuate between 70 and 90. Somebody else might fluctuate from, say, 65 to 95. Somebody else might, fluctuate between 60 and 83. Again, these are averages, and because we do know that some people's heart rate fluctuates more than others, those numbers that I threw out could be legitimate numbers based on what the study looked at. They don't give specifics in the study, but I continue. The results, what the researchers found from the results of the experiment was surprising. The participants who discussed the topics with a third-person perspective, i.e. that of the observer, and possessed a greater heart rate variation, were found to have a wiser and less biased views than those that had a smaller heart rate variation. So somebody whose heart rate fluctuates from, say, 65 to 90 was found to be less biased and have more wisdom than someone whose heart rate fluctuates from, say, 65 to 70. However, this changed when the first-person perspective was used, where they discovered that there was no indication of a link between heart rate variation and wiser judgment. So again, the variation of heart rate really only affected those, or they found the correlation here with those that discuss things from that outsider standpoint, that looked at things in the third-person perspective. Again, those who looked at things through that third-person perspective and had a higher variation of heart rate were found to have a wiser and less biased view than those that had a smaller heart rate variation, also looking at things from that third-person perspective. So what does this mean? This is the first study to show that the psychology of the heart, and in particular heart rate variation, related to less biased, wiser judgment and reasoning. It has already been discovered through previous studies that people with a higher heart rate variation tend to have a better ability in the use of memory. Professor Grossman explained that the study shows that cognitive ability isn't the only element at play when it comes to being wiser. Quote, research shows that wise reasoning is not exclusively a function of the mind and cognitive ability. We found that people who have greater heart rate variability and who are able to think about social problems from a distanced viewpoint demonstrate a greater capacity for wise reasoning. However, this does not necessarily mean that people with a greater heart rate variation are automatically wiser than others. People need to learn and take time to reflect on altruistic issues that come with third-person perspectives and reasoning in order to achieve the ability to possess wiser judgment. Quote, to channel their cognitive abilities for wiser judgment, people with greater heart rate variability first need to overcome their egocentric viewpoints. Either way, the study is an interesting insight into the relationship between physiology and cognitive understanding, which will no doubt lead the way to further research into how the heart's functioning really does impact the mind. There's more. Stay tuned.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com. When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Hey, welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Changing directions ever so slightly from the effects of your heart to the effects on your brain, showing that, more variation, or a greater variation in heart rate when you are able to look at things from a third-person perspective might mean that you're a little wiser, moving from using your heart to, affecting your mind, to following your heart. What do I mean? Well, make a bucket list, set some goals, and then set out to do those things. Article titled, Why People Who Create Bucket Lists Achieve More in Life. No matter who you are, there's probably something you really, really want. Some experience, some achievement, some monumental moment that has eluded you until now. Your dreams can be converted into reality, and a bucket list is one of the ways to help you achieve whatever it is that you've always wanted. A bucket list is an incredible mental tool to keep your dreams alive, as achievements are far more likely. Now, you might be asking, what is a bucket list? Well, quite simply, it's a list of things that you want to do before you kick the bucket. Now, I had never heard this term prior to the movie of the same name coming out several years ago, probably close to a decade ago now. Good movie, and probably one that I will watch again now that, bucket list is something that I've spoken of. But basically, it's a list of, goals in life that you want to do, not necessarily today or tomorrow, but sometime before you die. Having a vision, and getting back to the article here, having a vision for your life is perhaps the greatest tool that you can utilize in order to get what you want. What you give is a little bit of your time. What you receive is something extraordinary. Even before you get to live out your dreams that you've put on your bucket list, your life will change. You'll be working towards a goal and knowing that it will happen, which brings new excitement and vigor every day. So, what are you waiting for? Now, how does a bucket list change the way you think? The moment you put pencil or pen to paper, or start typing what you want to achieve, and I would actually suggest in this case, actually putting pencil or pen to paper. And we've talked before about how people that write things, physically write them, will remember them better than people that sit there and type. And this is one of those things to where when you're taking time to actually write something down, there's something about the permanence of having written it down. Certainly, you could, if you're using a pencil, you could erase it. If you're using a pen, you can scratch it out. You can burn the piece of paper. But there's just something a little more permanent about that than, say, typing on a keyboard and then forgetting to hit Control S when you close the window. And then, poof, it's gone forever. And you've forgotten it because you did not write it down. Yeah, you typed it. But again, remember, we talked about that a while back, how writing things helps you remember. I digress and continue. The moment you put pen to paper, you're already changing the way you think. You are mentally putting your intentions out there. Chances are, you'll start to feel excited about the possibility of having or experiencing things you've always wanted. Knowing what you want and writing it down is the catalyst for great things to come. It will begin to pop into your head at random times of the day as you envision your bucket list and all of the dreams that it holds. If you put the list somewhere that you will see it every day, it's a daily reminder of something great to come. The bucket list itself embodies what psychologists have learned when it comes to setting goals. Goals motivate you to accomplish things. And a bucket list asks you to be specific about what you want. Psychologists say that being specific about your goals makes you more motivated. A bucket list can be considered to be the critical first step in achieving goals. And now I see a bucket list and goals as two different things, but they're sort of, merging these together. And again, being specific, definitely better than being vague. So let's say you're writing down your goals, and goal number 1, be rich. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean having $20,000 in savings, having a nice car, and a decent house? Most people would not consider that to be, rich or wealthy. But if you're not in debt and, you're able to pay all of your bills and take some nice vacations, then, maybe you are, quote unquote, rich. Other people would say, no, I need at least 7 figures in my bank account, and I need this many cars and this big of a house and this many homes. So, be specific. Don't just say, I want to be rich or I want to be well off. What exactly do you mean by that? Because again, the more specific you are, the better chance you have of actually meeting the goal. Well, what's the saying? You don't know where you're going, or you'll never get where you're going if you don't know where you're going. something along those lines. Stay tuned. There's more here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Are you sick of government lackeys who say you didn't build that? Are you tired of elitists who think you need a government permission slip for everything? Everything you do is an A to B conversation, and the government should see their way out of it. Create true free markets by adopting the BIPCOT No Government License. The BIPCOT No Gov license allows use or modification of any product, service, or software except by governments or government agents. Go to BIPCOT.org. That's Bravo, India, Papa, Charlie, Oscar, Tango.org.
Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com.
Hi, this is Roger Paxton from the Lava Flow Podcast, the Free Coast Freecast, and Pax Libertas Productions, and you're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Short-term and long-term goals for your bucket list. That's right, we're talking bucket list. To test out how a bucket list can actually help you achieve things in life, start small. When you add small things to your list and you see them come to fruition, you become more inspired. Your belief in the positive effect of your bucket list is huge for achieving those bigger aspirations. For example, couples that start a bucket list together might create their ideal monthly super date. Maybe their date is a romantic dinner at an expensive restaurant, or maybe it's skydiving for two. It brings them closer as they figure out what they love to do. They start saving or invite friends or family to contribute to their bucket list dreams. Sites specifically designed for bucket list experiences make it possible for loved ones to contribute to one's true passion in life. And they have a link to a site, humdingerdays.co.uk. Not sure what it is, but it's right here in the middle where they say site specifically designed for bucket list experiences. Experiences you thought weren't possible because they're costly are easier than you think. If your family and friends knew what you had on your bucket list, they could contribute to your dreams on your birthday or other special occasions. Now, how do you develop your bucket list? There's actually a good bit of detail here, and I will try to get through as much of this as possible. Your bucket list should make life exciting even before you get to live out your dreams. If you know what you want and you write it down, you're a quarter of the way there. You heard that right. 25% of fulfilling your bucket list is making your bucket list. If you make it a habit to look at the list and take action with small steps, you have 1 foot in the door already. If you're not sure where to start, do a search online for bucket list tools. Don't forget that a bucket list is just the beginning when it comes to reaching your goals. Taking action to reach your accomplishments is the second half of the journey. So write it down, 25%. Start taking an action, you're halfway there. This is where the rapidity comes in. 4 things. Find a medium to start your bucket list. Really think about what you want, and I am summarizing this ever so briefly. As always, the link will be in the show notes. When you're building your list, don't think about what would impress others. Think about what you actually want. And then they, again, mention a lot of different tools that you can use. Don't forget, every Friday I answer your questions, ama@fppradio.com.
The podcasts of FPP Radio are licensed under Copy Heart. We believe that copying is a form of flattery and do not abide by the copyright laws. Those laws serve to restrict the flow of ideas which no one can really own. Copying is an act of love. Love is not subject to law. If you enjoy the show, consider joining the Fans program and get perks like ad-free versions of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio and FPP Radio News, and also get a copy of the monthly newspaper FPP News. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.